Short version, I'm releasing a game on Steam. It'll be out in a month, and in the meantime you can look at the store page through the link. It's okay, wishlist it. Now the long version. This video will basically be a vlog about my not especially harrowing journey to create a complete turn-based tactics game and get it released on Steam. Now you might know that getting released on Steam isn't actually that hard, but creating a game that isn't pure trash and then releasing it on Steam, that's the real challenge. It began back in 2016 when I was trying to learn how to be a real-life programmer. This failed miserably and I accidentally became a real-life YouTuber instead. However, I did start using the game engine Unity to make the basics of a strategy game known as Total War Devon. It was just fights between coloured shapes, and I spent a long time making an AI for it using the internet to gradually work out how the C# programming language worked in order to do this. But to hit a stumbling block, I was terrible at programming. I soon realised that in order to make any more progress with the project, I needed to start again because what I had so far was so poorly designed. It's hard to explain if you don't know programming stuff, but it's a bit like building a house. You can kind of put something together with a load of sticks, and then you stumble across the next page in a textbook that reveals how to make bricks, and mentions you probably should have laid a foundation at the start, and you just get destroyed. So like, half a year after I started, the Total War Devon project was dead. But I still needed to learn things, and by chance, I happened to play Fire Emblem on the 3DS, the one with Chrom in it. Sitting there analysing the grid-based movement, the simple combat and the outright suicidal and useless AI, I realised that if the standards were this low, this was the genre for me. Yes, even amateur programmer Devon could make an AI that just runs at you, attempts a 0% chance to hit attack with 0 damage, then stands there and dies in one hit when you counterattack it, and the grid-based, nice and easy to program pathfinding looked good too. Although that said, technically speaking, free movement is still grid-based, it's just a grid with like 1 pixel between each accessible point. But anyway, thus began Project Ice Emblem, a mission to make a turn-based tactics battle system that was basically like Fire Emblem, or the older Fire Emblem specifically. Working 1 day a week on it, after a few months I had something. It was a little engine that lets you fight MS Paint tier figures on a map with passable and impassable terrain blocks, with the same fundamental mechanics as Fire Emblem. It was quite easy to do, although that was years ago now so I forget. But those fundamentals are in the Godless Tactics game today, plus a whole load of bells and whistles, since that basic system is actually kind of boring without all the anime waifu simulator stuff that Fire Emblem adds around it. And behind the scenes, this time I had programmed it much better, and in such a way that I could build upon it without the whole code structure falling apart. I had a foundation and a mud brick house with no furniture in it, and it was time to add a garden. I wanted to create a game where you had this little battle system and it was put to use in an open world adventure across a big map with wars going on you could participate in. This was inspired by Mount & Blade, I think, but nothing as complex as that. In copying Fire Emblem, I'd added the ability to have an allied faction help you in fights. So that led to there being a red enemy faction, a green ally faction, and a blue U faction. Over the next 6 months or so, I created a little world map war thing that had settlements spawning parties of troops to attack each other, in a vein inspired by Sid Meier's Pirates, in fact. There was a player party among all this, and if you attacked an enemy party, you resolved the battle with the Fire Emblem turn-based tactics thing. This led to the creation of the Ice Emblem demo 3 years ago, and the full Godless Tactics release this year is really just a fleshed out version of that demo. A lot of the core stuff is already in there. You could defeat parties to get currency called resources, and spend it on equipment and items in settlements. You could gain reputation with the faction you were fighting to get passive bonuses, and you could capture settlements and give them to other factions to influence the little war. It was sort of a game, and then over the next 3 years it gradually became more sort of a game. I didn't always keep my 1 day a week schedule, as doing the Kings and Generals voiceovers was interfering with my overall schedule, and I was prioritizing keeping the channel schedule going over this stuff. But gradually, I added in a much bigger map with 500 to 600 settlements, hundreds of little points of interest to find, and loads of lore about the world this was set in, plus the basics of a story with a few cutscenes and story objectives to follow, if you so please. I press-ganged my real-life waifu, who knows about art and stuff, to make me the sprites, cutscene art, UI stuff, and tile graphics, some of which were in there by the time of the demo and the rest of which were added over those years. The music and sound effects were either bought from the Unity Assets store or are just me making noises into the microphone. The game's total asset budget is like €50, so this is true triple Z quality. The setting is a not especially post-apocalyptic future. Creating this setting, the main goal was to have something where the Fire Emblem, swords and bows style of fighting was applicable, but I also wanted it to be in the future so that things like magic could be real things, lost arts of the past, and that sort of thing. The world is based on an idea for a novel I'd written notes about many years ago, set in a future world where civilization was almost destroyed by something or other, and now the rebuilding humans lived alongside the immortal ancient humans, the relics of the high technology golden age. It was basically a different take on the man and elf thing from Lord of the Rings, like any good fantasy story idea. But there was also the idea of having another branch of humans who were all genetically identical and worked together like ants in a hive mind sort of thing, and the idea of a space-based wing of civilization that was carrying on high above. And all these concepts now appear in the lore and storyline of Godless Tactics in some shape or form. Anyway, so yes, I gradually made this big game, then I eventually made the mistake of playing it and found it to be heavily buggy, in serious need of balancing, and in need of better maps and AI. This happened a few times. I think over the last year of that 3-year period it went through continuous cycles of being quote-unquote done, but with me knowing that there were still big improvements to make, and gradually doing them. This included adding new battle mechanics and special things I'll probably highlight in a future tutorial-ish video once the game is out. Also made the AI be genuinely better when you play on hard mode, mainly just to one-up things like Total War that just make the hard mode AI cheat instead. Although mine does cheat a little bit on hard, but only insofar as it begins the game with certain abilities and passive bonuses the player and ally factions only get in the late game. Not even that cheaty, which was indeed something I was actively trying to avoid due to disliking it so much in Total War specifically. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes tweaking to balance the experience and gameplay, needed to make it so that enemy forces would win the war if you didn't do anything to stop them, but at the same time leave plenty of time for the player to explore, make mistakes, or make not optimally planned out strategic strikes based on in-depth game knowledge. And this was one of the two main ways in which XCOM inspired me. If you ever go into the game files for XCOM, you'll discover that the game is lying to you in several ways. All the chances to hit and to get hit are not the real chances. They're actually based on a system that tries to stop you from doing either too well or too badly. Also, while the encounters with the enemies and the fights are kind of random seeming, the game is in the background weighing up how able you are to deal with enemies and makes them wander into the corner or something if you're not done fighting other things, stuff like that. All this happens invisibly and gives you the impression that you defied the odds to get through a mission, but really it was trying quite hard not to kill you, especially if you've taken a couple of casualties, then it really eases up on you. In XCOM, these things are required to deal with the fundamentally flawed core design of the game, but that's a rant for another time. In Godless Tactics, the player has more control over what fights to take, so it's less important to keep the player alive in such a fashion, but I did use things like this to make the AI be artificially more successful on the campaign map if you don't actually fight them, and to suddenly be less aggressive if you accidentally trigger a whole load of enemies to swarm at you at once during battles. It varies a lot based on difficulty, but I'm looking out for you behind the scenes, and even on hard, it's not as hard as it could be. It also gets better AI on hard, where it actively tries to kill characters instead of spreading damage out across your party, and it even does things unheard of in Fire Emblem, like not attacking when it has 0% chance to hit, and pulling back troops when there's no point in them attacking. I think the easy mode AI is pure Fire Emblem. Normal will sometimes be suicidal, sometimes clever, can't really remember, but I spent a long time programming and testing it, and it's at least as good as something I saw in a AAA game. The bar is met. Oh, and by the way, the second way in which XCOM inspired the game is adding something that's a bit like Overwatch called Sync Watch, but again, that's a kind of detailed battle mechanic that I guess I'll talk about another time. One other thing I spent a long time doing was optimizing the pathfinding, a very, very long time doing that, due to a lot of the parties on the map needing to travel a really long way through complex routes. There's no point going over the details, I guess, but trust me, it's very, very clever, and you should buy the game just to experience the joy of a relatively short end turn time, compared to Total War, that is, of course, my true rival. Now, to finish the development story, by roughly the end of last year, the game was quote-unquote done for the 10th time, and this time I actually roped in some patrons and kind passers-by to test it for me, which helped me discover loads of issues and made loads of inroads to a few game-breaking bugs. It's like you never really know how broken the game is until someone else points stuff out. There were loads of things I'd never imagined were broken that came up. So, testing, good. There's probably a load more in the release version, so if you do give it a play, enjoy finding those. I might fix them if you tell me. So then, like a month before this video, I applied to get onto Steam. It turns out in retrospect that you're supposed to kind of apply to get onto Steam before you start development, but anyway, you have to pay $100 to get in, and then you go through this complicated but very well explained and like signposted process. I think that Steam's clearly had to deal with people getting really confused going through their system, so putting a game on it's been made like as easy as possible, despite there being all these legal hoops and things you have to go through. So eventually, after proving I wasn't a scam artist and that my game wasn't a virus, I was given permission to post a Steam store page, and here we are. Next month the game will be available. You have to have the Steam store page be up there for at least 2 weeks before you're allowed to release things, so you can't even just throw stuff up there whenever you want. All sorts of rules on Steam. But anyway, it's going to be available next month, and at the time it comes out I'll do a Let's Play or something to celebrate and make it so there's some content that exists for this game in case any randomers stumble across it on Steam and end up playing it. But for now, if you've got Steam, then why not add Godless Tactics to your wishlist? There's more info about it and stuff on the store page as well, much more than I actually bothered to explain here. And you don't have to even want it or buy it. I mean, I'm pretty sure people putting it on a wishlist will make it seem more popular and give it more Steam algorithm points. So I don't really intend to push it that hard and really try to just sell this game because I'm already fighting with the algorithm of YouTube. But what I think this game will be is a nice way to support the channel without going through something like Patreon. With the game I get like half the money when you buy it, the rest goes to tax and to Steam of course, who take quite a bit. And the upside of this is you actually get something. It's less of a donation, more a purchase. So that will be a nice way to have people give money to the channel that's not just straight up giving it to me for no reason. Hooray! It's going to be the first of the OffyD Corp official merch products, and the second will be the Fire Margin official novel, which I'll hope to put together during the time freed up by getting this game out the door. Hopefully it's not really broken and I won't have to keep working on it for a long time after this. And then, for the future, will it be Godless Tactics 2, or am I finally ready to return to my destiny and destroy Creative Assembly with Total War Devin? We shall see. But for now, stay safe, perform the recommended quarantine activity of clicking on the Godless Tactics wishlist button, and I'll catch you dirty gamers next month when this whole thing becomes a reality. Oh, and if you have any questions, write them in the comments, because that will help the YouTube algorithm. Yes, you need to help my Steam algorithm and YouTube algorithm today. Praise be to the algorithm.